The Browns Blitz is brought to you by BigPlay.com and Cleveland Sports Talk. Now here are your hosts, Rod Bloom and Sam Maddie.
Hello and welcome to the Browns Blitz. Today is Tuesday, April 30th, and this is episode 11. And today we're going to be doing our Browns draft wrap-up. And as we move on toward the beginning of Browns season, which is going to be here before we know it. So I want to bring in my partner, Sam Maddie. Sam, how's your day been?
It's been, I feel like I've had 2 Mondays back to back. So if that tells you anything.
Yeah, I know you've had a rough day. So I know you're joining us today was kind of up in the air or not. So I appreciate you, kind of taking one for the team and diving in here at the last minute to record.
Oh, not taking one for the team. Gotta provide for the Browns.
Well, yeah. Yeah, but I know things have been going a little bit rough. So it's good to be talking to you nonetheless. But when we're talking Browns draft, we wanted to have somebody in here who knows our way around the draft. So we brought in none other than Joe Draime from Big Play, fresh off the Big Play Reflog show recently. How's it going, Joe?
That's pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Doing well.
Just doing great. So
you did a great job on that show, by the way.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Killer reviews. So if you haven't listened to that, check that out for sure.
Yeah, I thought, first of all, guys, we just kind of talking. The Browns, we all kind of hoped that hoped under the right circumstances, the Browns might trade up into the first round and nab somebody, maybe a Greedy Williams, somebody like that, that could really help them. Didn't happen. So let's talk about the first round nonetheless and kind of get some impressions and, some surprises, some things that stood out. So, Joe, why don't you lead us off since you're the guy who's probably spent like 10 times the amount of time studying this, and you probably had a lot more expectations going into this than maybe Sam and I did.
What stood out to me more than anything else was the fact that Greedy Williams did fall as far as he did. I had him as a top 15 player on my big board. Thought he would go somewhere within the 12 to 20 range, and he wound up dropping all the way down midway into the second round. And a bunch of corners were taken in front of him. I was stunned that Trayvon Mullen was taken before him, and also Sean Bunting from Central Michigan.
How do you explain that? I was shocked.
The NFL, by nature, is a league where GMs follow each other like sheep, and they there's a bunch of different trends where, during the course of the draft, people are going to be thinking, oh, they passed on him, what's wrong with him that we don't know?
It's like Greedy caught the plague halfway, once he got past 25, he had the plague or something.
Yeah, it was really strange.
No official report has come out, and I don't think it will, but, they were saying that they thought that tackling was a concern, and then maybe his interviews as of, late, right before the draft started, weren't as good as they could have been. So those are the reasons that I, initially heard that he had fallen, into the second round. So who knows? I don't really care. He's a member of the Cleveland Browns. He's going to be a great pairing with Denzel Ward. And it's going to be a no-fly zone for us in the secondary.
That's right. So, aside from Greedy, what stood out for you, Sam?
Well, a couple things. Obviously the Kyler Murray pick, we went back and forth on that, and I think everybody did. It was a 50-50. Really surprised by the Cleveland Farrell pick. Good for him. He ended up being a top 4 pick, and great for Cleveland Farrell. Maybe not so good for the Raiders, but we'll just have to see. I'm happy for Greg Williams that he got a great player, some best overall rated in the draft in Quinnen Williams, for his defense. Let's talk about the Giants, but I'll try to, not spend a lot of time on them because I don't really give a shit about the Giants. Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones at 6. You saw the reactions, you saw the memes, you saw the videos. Reach is, reach. Let's just leave it at that, and then they want to talk about how there was teams that were going to come up, like the Redskins possibly, or Miami could have come up and taken him. I think that's absolute bullshit. He wasn't going anywhere. He could have easily been taken at 17. But, whatever. Ed Oliver fell to 9 for Buffalo. I think that's an absolute steal for them. I had him mocked at 3 in my last mock draft. So I think Ed Oliver is going to be a great fit, and Bills Mafia is going to absolutely love him. The Steelers did something completely different and out of the ordinary, and that's trading up, a significant amount of spots for Devin Bush at 10. So, I think Devin Bush is worth the trade up. I think he's a good player. He is from that team up north, but once we get past college, we just look into NFL players, and he's now in our division as a rival. So I still have somewhat of the same feelings about him. I like you had said and mentioned, I had hoped that we were going to sneak in there towards the end with maybe one of Seattle's picks. Seattle ended up trading out of their first one to Green Bay at 21, but kept their one at 29. I thought for sure we were going to have one of their picks. Didn't work out. I think we could have gotten maybe like a Montez Sweat around there or such. Maybe we would have taken Greedy at that point. I don't know. But it is what it is, and I'm happy with what we got. And, I've been talking way too long. So,
yeah, I was amazed. To me, 3 out of the first 6 picks just blew my mind. I mean, I didn't see the logic in taking Kyler Murray when you have Josh Rosen on your team. So I didn't understand that pick. I know everybody else likes Murray and all that. And then Cleveland Farrell and then Daniel Jones. I'm thinking, what in the world is going on here? I know that these GMs have their own talent evaluators and their scouts and everything. So maybe they have other information. But are you serious? Because to me, Farrell and Jones were both going to be there near the bottom of the first round, more than likely. Maybe Farrell wouldn't have made it all the way down to 27 for the Raiders, but I think there were a lot of guys that would have gone in front of him. So that was just very surprising to me.
It would have been the right pick for Farrell. Like, I honestly think he could have dropped 24, like Raiders' 24th pick. Like, he could have been there.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and that was my thought. And how do you? I just didn't understand. I didn't understand the pick with Josh Allen sitting right there. How do you pass?
I know.
How do you pass on him?
Well, the same thing with New York. Like they talked about how Gettleman was so much about getting defensive linemen. He passed on Josh Allen, but then could have got Daniel Jones at 17. But I watched something on Good Morning Football this morning, and Daniel Jones was their guy. Like, he was their guy, and Gettleman stuff too. So he was the number 1 rated quarterback on their board, so they took him. So we obviously have different opinions about it, but that's what he wanted to do, and that's what he did. So.
Well, go ahead.
Only the Giants would be dumb enough to take Blaine Gabbert over J.J. Watt.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it, and during the draft, I'm sitting here thinking, wow, the Steelers jumped in. They went way too high to get Devin Bush. But here's the thing, guys. I think everybody thought that there were only 2 first-round linebackers, 2 guys that were going to go in the first round. So who knew when he was going to go? People may have had him slotted to go around 18 or 20, but anybody could have taken him. So you really can't really fault him too much for jumping up to 10 to get him.
Something else that surprised me is there wasn't as many trades in the first round as I thought there was going to be. Like, and I want to say that in the top 15. Like, because I mean, the Jets talked about moving out. You heard that with the Raiders, and then obviously like 7 through 10, there was a possibility between the Jags, Detroit, and Bills, and then obviously with the Steelers moving up with Denver, that there was a possibility. But we didn't really see that trade until 10, and then it kind of just everything else went according to plan up through 20. So I thought we were going to see a lot more fireworks.
Yeah, well, let's move on to the Browns draft, guys. And we've talked about Greedy quite a bit already, but I just kind of want to get your impressions as Greedy keeps falling and falling, and the Browns are not trading up for him, not trading up. And really, for quite a while, there were still several corners left. So I think a lot of us are probably doing the math. I'm thinking, well, if we don't get Greedy, we're going to get Justin Lane or we're going to get somebody else, because I'm doing the math on how many corners, how many top safeties there are, and I'm like, all right, we're going to get somebody, so it's going to be all right. And then Greedy ends up making it to 46, and they do the little trade up and get him. So I just kind of was wondering what you guys were thinking, how nervous you were, and kind of when it kind of registered that you thought we were going to get Greedy, or if it happened before they actually took him at 46.
I was stunned because I thought at 45 there was no way that New England was not going to take him.
Yeah. Yeah, same here.
It's like, and right before it happened, I tweeted out, I was like, all right, it's Justin Lane or it's going to be Greedy Williams. And, and that was when we were still sitting at 49. And then all of a sudden I see we traded. And at that point I knew it was going to be Greedy. But, do you all think that we could have got him at 49 without trading? The teams that were ahead of us, I'm looking.
I don't know who was right after there. I would have to go back and look.
It was Seattle and New Orleans.
Yeah, that's right, and that's Marquise Blair, the safety, went. Eric McCoy went to the Saints. So.
But you don't know who else would have given up a fifth to jump in there and take him. So I would give up a fifth-round pick to make sure we got him every single time, guys.
Yeah, Greedy Williams is worth at least a fifth-round pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. So
you got to think, too, what it does for, like, we have one of the youngest cornerback pairing in the league, and we might have one of the best. Like, it's the best of both worlds. It's just awesome. And I'm really excited to see the pressure that they put on. And like I was saying earlier, there's just going to be a no-fly zone in the secondary. So,
do you guys have any concerns about Greedy Williams as far as not only the tackling, but the rumors of the lack of effort, not caring about football, stuff like this? The thoughts that he's not all in. There's just been a lot of talk about some of that stuff. I can't imagine that Dorsey would have liked this guy and taken him there if that's the case. And I can't imagine that he would come into Cleveland and be able to get away with that kind of attitude on this team with these players.
It doesn't worry me when you have guys like Jarvis Landry and Baker Mayfield in this locker room. They're going to make sure they're getting 110% out of every guy.
I don't have any worries about it because everything that you hear negative really during the draft is probably smoke screens anyway, just to try to make a guy fall. Obviously, it worked in this case with Greedy, but with just how excited he was and being paired with those two LSU guys and Odell and Jarvis and just what is the new Browns to come. I have no worries about Greedy Williams whatsoever.
All right, so we move on to pick 80, and as we approach, as the board's moving down and teams are making their pick, I don't know about you guys. I'm watching, and Justin Lane is still there. I'm thinking, if it's me, with the need for corners in this league, I'm taking Justin Lane just because I don't know about the health of Denzel Ward, and I want a strong secondary. But I also understand the need for linebackers on this team. So then the pick is, I'm probably going to mess his first name up. Is it Sione? Taki?
Sure.
We're going to go with that. So the linebacker from BYU, and I think there are some mixed reports out on him, but I know some people really like him. Some people, thought he was a sixth rounder or further down. But I think we also know that this, at least in my estimation, I think from what I understand is that this draft class wasn't overly strong at linebacker. So if you have somebody you really like, you got to take them and bring them in. And the Browns had a need at linebacker. So kind of wanted to get you guys' thoughts on that pick at that point.
I liked it because, again, like you said, when you have a guy that you like, then you have to take him. And Taki, he's mean. He's gonna come downhill, make a lot of tackles. And more than anything else, they just need depth at the linebacker position more than anything else right now. That's their biggest discernible weakness.
I watched some film afterwards, after we took him, and what I gathered, this guy can get to the ball, and he knows how to get there. Nothing's going to stop him. In 2018, he finished with 119 tackles, including 10 tackles for loss and 4 sacks. He's got great versatility on the edge, and he's a true linebacker. So I like this pick. I don't think that we need to worry about attitude stuff. I think that'll be taken care of in the locker room and then through John Dorsey as well. So I like his aggressiveness, and like you said, this wasn't a very deep linebacker class, but I think he'll be a good fit, in the North for us. So.
All right, then we get down to the 4th round pick. 119 was Sheldrick Redwine. And I got to stop here for a minute, guys. We got back-to-back picks of Taki and Redwine. And I'm thinking jersey sales are off the charts for these two guys because I would love to have a Taki jersey. And I think just about any housewife in Ohio would love to have a Redwine jersey. And yes, I stole that from Twitter. I saw somebody, but it just makes total sense. I mean, those have to be right up there with the Beckham and the Mayfield jerseys, guys.
Without question.
Yeah. So anyways, Joe, what did you know about him going in, and what were your thoughts on that pick?
Very physical tackler. I really like the pick. He reminds me a lot of a TJ Ward type of player. And again, safety is another position where, since they lost Jabril Peppers, they need some depth at. He'll give some good competition to a Burnett. And also, he can play the sort of the nickel position when you have 5 DBs on the field, and he's going to play well in coverage and make a lot of tackles.
I think for him with our team, I think free safety is the best fit for him. I'm also hearing and reading that he is quite an excellent guy on special teams, so I expect to see him there as well. So, this is a depth thing. I'm glad we got him. He the few highlights that I have seen of him, he seems to be able to read the ball well, and he is a hard hitter as well. So something we always like to have in the North.
So he's a guy with great physical tools. You guys see him as a developmental guy who could potentially become a starter at some point.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I would say so too.
All right, and then the first of the remaining 5th round picks was Mack Wilson, the linebacker out of Alabama, who Browns fans had been screaming for, for the Browns to take probably in the prior 2 picks. Somehow made it to the 5th round, and the Browns finally pulled the trigger and take their second linebacker. How'd you guys feel about that one?
Outside of Greedy, this was by far my favorite pick. I have no idea how this guy made it to the 5th round. He's a freak. You ask him to go do anything, and he's going to go do it. And he seems like the type of guy, when you watch interviews with him, that is never satisfied with just being good. And now you have him coming off of an embarrassing national championship game loss against Clemson. And now he's a 5th round pick when he probably should have been at worst 3rd. He's going to be angry, and he's going to be ready to work.
Yeah, agreeing with Joe, this guy's got a chip on his shoulder, and he's got something to prove. And I watched some clips today from Jake Burns' his Twitter account and some film that he did, and this guy can lay the fucking wood. So really excited to have him, and think he'll be a great addition to our linebacking core.
I've heard it said that if he would have gone back for another year, that he could have potentially been a first rounder next year. Do you guys believe that?
I do, for sure. He has a little bit of rawness to his game, and he needs to be coached up in the NFL a little bit. But he's a guy that once you get him in camp and get him developed a little bit, he could be a stud.
Yeah, I mean, he's an SEC guy and comes from one of the greatest colleges in football in Alabama. So yeah, I definitely think he could have been next year.
All right, so 15 picks later. I don't know who was on the board, guys. I honestly wasn't watching the draft. I was following along on my phone at this point. Day 3, we're all kind of tired at this point. Spent a lot of time in front of the TV. The Browns pull the trigger on a kicker, some kicking. We'll see if it's competition or if it's his job. But the kicker from Oklahoma, Austin, and I'm not sure, is it Seibert or Siebert? Seibert. Okay. So apparently an excellent kicker from what I've seen, just in some clips. So were you guys surprised the Browns drafted a kicker?
I was surprised they did in the 5th round, but when you look at it and you think about last season where they had at least 2 losses because as a direct result of their kicking game and a tie, and you had to take somebody, I think, at some point. And Seibert was the best kicker in this draft for sure.
I read something today from John Dorsey, and they said that, he was on their board, and if he was going to be available at the pick around the area that they had him, they were going to take him, and that's exactly what they did. I have watched film on this guy. I didn't realize who it was until we had actually taken him, but I had watched film on him probably 4 months earlier on a YouTube video of just kickers from a Coles camp. And this guy's outstanding, and I think he actually holds a record at Oklahoma for like the most points held for the school. So this
college football.
Yeah, this guy he's going to be great. I do think he's going to bring in some competition for Greg Joseph, and best of luck to both of them. I just want somebody that's consistent. So I don't want to have to worry about extra points or field goals at this point.
So what odds are you giving him of beating Greg Joseph right now, guys?
I think he's going to. I don't think you draft a kicker in the 5th round for him to not be your starter.
Yep, I feel the same way. I think he wins it.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Okay, guys, we got 2 more picks to go through, but when they take a kicker at this point, I put out a tweet, and I was kind of thinking along these lines. I'm like, okay, we've drafted a corner, a safety, and 2 linebackers, and I tweeted, I said, okay, we drafted a kicker who's going to compete, probably has a great chance of making the team. I don't know how many more guys that they draft are going to have a chance to make this team just because of the roster. Do you guys agree with that or not?
I agree. The roster at this point is becoming very, very talented across the board, and at this point, I would expect some guys to make it just as far as depth on the offense and defensive line.
I think it's good competition. Kicker is somewhere where we needed to address. So I'm gonna disagree. I'm gonna say that these 2 guys, because with our next pick, they're calling Drew Forbes as the prospect X. Like he's that guy that nobody really ever heard of, but apparently he's really, really good. So no, I still think that you look for the guys after a kicker in this circumstance to still come in camp and compete. And yeah.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Drew Forbes then. He was taken in the 6th round, pick 189, offensive lineman out of Southeast Missouri State. And so he's good, huh, Sam?
Yeah, it's from what I understand and what I read is that he does all the little things well, and he's a great offensive lineman, and John Dorsey's really, really high on him. So, and was really thrilled to see that he was still available on the 6th.
What can you tell us, Joe? Do you have any input on him?
I think at this point, I find it hard to believe that he can crack the starting rotation. At this stage, I think he's definitely there more for depth purposes, but he's more of a developmental guy as it is, coming from a smaller school, not having the high level of coaching that most of these guys have had. But when you develop him, Joel Petonio, I believe, is 29 this year. Once he starts to decline a little bit, we're going to hope that this guy can slide into that spot.
Sure.
I definitely think he's a depth guy as well, but that's something that we need. You never know when offensive lineman's going to go down. So
that's right. I mean, and that's what you're looking for in the bottom of the draft. Shoot, if you can find a start, any starters in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, which Dorsey has done on occasion, then you're really striking gold.
Yep.
But then let's talk about the last pick for the Browns was in the 7th round, pick 221, Donnie Lewis Jr., the cornerback out of Tulane. Thoughts?
Yeah, he's going to be a guy where he's going to give some competition in camp, but he's a guy I can't see making the roster.
Okay.
I don't know anything about him really. What I'm reading currently right now is he's handsy, disrupted throughout the route, and frustrates receivers with an annoying play style. I just think that we've got too many other guys that are seasoned and already know our defensive play, but who knows? So good luck to him.
Yeah, just somebody for competition and kind of see if he can make an impression, huh?
Yep.
Okay. Joe, I just want to bring up real quick the list of Browns undrafted free agents, guys they either signed or brought in for a tryout. Is there anybody that stands out for you? Anybody worth talking about?
Hold on, let me pull up that list real quick.
That's fine. Sorry, I didn't mention that ahead of time. Kind of catching you off guard, but
nah, it's all right.
I know from time to time, Dorsey and pretty much anybody, they tend to find a guy in the UDFAs here and there. So just wanted to see. But since the draft, and I know it's been at 7 rounds for a while, but with it being at 7 rounds, sometimes there's guys that slip through and make it to teams and actually become pretty darn good players.
Yeah, and just from what I'm seeing, David Blau, the Purdue quarterback that they just signed, from what I watched him, he has a lot of traits that remind me of a Brian Hoyer, he was obviously a very solid backup, which is something that everybody needs in the NFL.
Yeah. The Browns have. I think we should feel a little bit better at QB. I mean, not. We're talking beyond Baker, guys. I'm not questioning Baker whatsoever. Let's be clear about that. But yeah, we've got a couple other guys in camp now. Who can fight for that backup spot. So I think I'm pretty happy about that. Let's kind of wrap up before we move on to some questions, which Sam's going to handle. Let's kind of wrap it up just by talking overall draft and just your impressions of who you think won this draft. And we'll start out with Joe. Which team won this draft?
I think the Redskins for sure. They managed to get their franchise quarterback and a franchise pass rusher in the same draft, which almost never happens. And that's, usually when you have your franchise quarterback, the next logical step is your franchise defensive end the next year. And they were able to do that with Dwayne Haskins and Montez Sweat in the same year.
Hard to dispute. What do you think, Sam?
I'm really happy for Josh Rosen. I think the way that everything was handled in Arizona was shitty. I think it could have been done a different way. Reports read that Josh Rosen didn't even know that they had taken Kyler Murray until they put his, the video feed of him in the green room getting the phone call. So, Steve Keim, whatever. He's on the hot seat, obviously. I find very hard to believe that he's there again this year if they have a really bad season again. I don't think that they win more than 4 games, if I'm being honest. But I'm happy for Josh, and he kind of surprised me. Like, he didn't, everybody wanted to talk about how he was a baby, being from California. He's kind of fed everything with a golden spoon, and I think he handled himself well. I watched his press conference in Miami, and he was asked some really difficult questions where, he could have taken the opportunity to really slam Arizona and the organization, but he didn't. And I think it's a good opportunity for him in South Beach with the Dolphins, and hopefully it works out for him. So I think there's not a lot of people that get this second chance like this, and I hope he makes the most of it.
So you think Josh Rosen won the draft?
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, you have a good point. You really do. You got out of a bad situation and having to just probably sit on the bench or battle against a guy who probably wasn't going to get a fair shot against. So, I'm going to agree as far as the Redskins, but I think it's worth talking about what the Buffalo Bills did real quick. I thought they did an excellent job with their 2 picks and getting Ed Oliver and then Cody Ford. Same thing, adding just 2 total studs, and I think both guys slid to them. Yeah. So, I think we kind of have a soft spot for Buffalo because we feel like the city's a little bit like Cleveland, and the fans are a lot like Cleveland fans. So, I think that they had an excellent draft just with those 2 guys.
Shout out to Bills Mafia. I love Bills fans, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our Lake Erie brothers.
That's right.
I love them.
That's right. So I'm going to kick it over to you, Sam, for the questions that we got on Twitter today.
Yep. So I'm going to ask you guys these questions, and we'll let Joe start off and Rod finish. The first one comes from @NetDog, and it's the DB selected had very different strengths between them. How do you see the starting lineup and immediate depth shaking out with this cast?
Well, I would assume that you're going to see, obviously, Randall and Ward as Randall being the starting free safety. You're going to see Ward, obviously, being the first corner. Then I think Burnett's probably going to be starter at strong. And then I don't see any way Greedy's not the number 2 corner.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see. You never know with rookie corners, so I don't know if Greedy will start right off the bat or not. Corner's kind of a tricky position in the NFL. If he shows up and he looks like Denzel Ward did last season, then sure, he'll start. If not, it'll be one of the other guys starting out there, for the first few weeks until he's ready to take over.
Well, and I just want to point out, though, I think Greedy is being put in the best situation because he's got to go up against Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Antonio Callaway, Speedster, David Njoku. I mean, the guys that he's going to be practicing with every single day are top caliber, arguably one of the best receiving corps in football. So I have no doubt in my mind, pending injury, hopefully that does not happen, that he will be the starter on day 1.
Practice is going to be harder than games is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a good thing. So.
That's right.
All right, the next question we have is from @TheJudge, and he says, 2 linebackers were drafted. Do you think one or both could potentially take roster spots of current starters? And if only one, who do you think would get the boot?
I can't see anybody getting their roster spot taken. I think it's very possible you could see Mac Wilson maybe taking Jannard Avery's spot as a starter.
I don't see these guys taking roster spots for starters. I think the same guys are going to start, especially at the beginning of the season. I think Jannard Avery is going to be given every opportunity to be the starter, but we're going to have to see how he does playing, as quote unquote an every down linebacker, even if there is such a thing in the NFL right now. Because last season he was mostly a pass rusher, designated pass rusher, didn't play a lot of straight up linebacker and didn't do a lot of coverage and things like that. So I think they're going to try to see what Gennard can do. If he can't, then there's definitely going to be an open spot for one of these guys like Mack or to get out there. So it's going to be interesting. And Dorsey doesn't draft guys. He doesn't bring guys in to line them up in spots. He brings guys in to compete. And I think there's going to be open competition. So we'll have to see what happens.
All right. We got our next question from @WeirdJBronovich, and he says, the Browns had the chance to take Mack Wilson in rounds 3 and 4 and did not. Do you think it came to a point in the war room where he was the best player available and they could not pass him up again? It almost felt like, well, we got our linebacker, but if you guys are going to let this talent slip, then okay. So what are your all's thoughts on that?
Absolutely. There was, at that point, he was undisputably the best player available where he was taken.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that they had the two guys they took in the 3rd and 4th round rated higher than him, but who knows how high they had those guys rated? They may have had a 3rd round grade on all 3 of those guys. So it's just how it happened. So I'm sure Dorsey was thrilled that he was there in the 5th round, just like all the rest of us were.
All right, our next question, is from @26SSN. This is a good question. It says, was the decision to draft a kicker a sign that the front office is already satisfied with the team's depth, such that they felt they had the luxury of using a pick on a kicker? It's a good question.
That's a very good question. I think it's very possible because this team, Dorsey addressed so much in free agency and through trades that there's really no real huge weakness and they had already drafted very solid depth at that point. And I do think that they had the freedom to take the best kicker available at the spot that they did.
It could be somewhat, but guys, I really just think it comes down to the board that Dorsey set up. And I think he really liked his kicker, thought that he could make a big difference on this team, and I think that's why he took him.
Okay, our next question is from Chase KR19, and he says, do you see any apparent holes on the roster remaining, and if so, how can they be addressed before the season?
Maybe at defensive tackle depth, I would like to see them have one more solid rotational player, and I would say they'll address that once waivers start during training camp.
Yeah, I totally agree with Joe. I really expected them to draft a defensive tackle or two, probably late in the draft. I haven't looked over I'm not familiar enough with the undrafted free agents. I don't know how many defensive tackles they signed. In looking it over, I thought they signed a couple guys. So, and I know they have some on the roster. So we'll see if anybody there can step up. If not, I think I'm right there with Joe with his thinking that they'll bring somebody in and they'll get it taken care of. Because, yeah, they definitely need some more depth behind the studs that they have starting.
Yeah, to kind of chime in on that, I think it's going to happen, during cuts, during preseason. I think that's when we're going to see some guys get cut and then, for us to, see their value and then add them to the team. So our last question is kind of in regards to the defensive tackle position. Connie Ratliff and Baby says that, do we think that the Browns are going to sign Gerald McCoy? She believes that he is still with the Bucs, but things about him have been hush hush on news on Tampa. I think Gerald would be an asset for the Browns. Do you guys think that Gerald would be a good fit for us? Do you think he's too expensive? Do you think that they actually move him, or do you think he goes through camp and then eventually gets cut?
I think he's a decent fit, but I can't see it happening. He's going to want too much money, and he's going to be too expensive to trade for.
I'd love to have him, but it probably does go to the money, guys. So you have to be realistic. Yeah, I mean, it just all depends. It would be wonderful to fill a hole like that with a guy like Gerald McCoy, but it kind of feels like if something was going to happen there, it probably would have happened already. I don't know. We'll see. And I don't see the Browns giving out another huge contract at this point to somebody like that.
Especially for his age. I could maybe see, people have pinned Duke Johnson to possibly being a part of that trade and an incentive for them, especially with their need at running back and some depth there. But yeah, I don't see it happen. I don't think it's, people probably get mad. I just don't think it's worth it. His age, how expensive he's going to be. I'd rather find somebody younger and cheaper. So.
Yeah, and I mean, you need depth at DT, so you need some guys who can play and take some downs, but they don't have to be necessarily top of the line. It'd be great if they were. I was hoping Haloti Ngata would have signed with the Browns rather than retiring and just come and played with these guys and given them a breather here and there. Somebody like that would have been nice, but and come in and sign a deal for $2 or $3 million for 1 or 2 seasons. That's the kind of guy that I would like to see come, not a guy who wants huge money, because you're looking for rotational guys. We have our starters. We want guys to come in and be a part of the rotation. So that does it for the questions, right, Sam?
Yes, that's it. Appreciate it. Thanks for the questions, guys. And it's always a fun segment for me. I like to interact with the fans, and we appreciate that. So thank you all for the questions.
All right. Well, hey, guys, we want to thank Joe. We want to thank you for coming on and talking draft with us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Joe, do you want to go ahead and plug your Twitter and make sure everybody can find you and they can follow you?
Yes, you can find me at jdraime_10.
All
right, then that's gonna do it. So this has been the Browns Blitz, and we will catch you all next time.